out of this, you cannot, my friend, listen.
In that God.
Listen.
You're talking about the God that created everything, yeah?
First of all, you just believe, like your gentleman before says, I'm 100% sure there is no creator, no designer. And now,
likely right, yes.
and now you have a cause which has energy, which has a will, and which exists. Do you see how much that you believe? You already believe something we said is the essential characteristics of a creator, God. Don't call it God, call it the creator, the originator of this universe. Some originator of the universe.
Another suggestion.
Before you make another suggestion, let's take this lady into the discussion. Do you agree that this cause has to be of this nature? Yes? The cause that we've just explained about the universe.
Are you
the cause of our universe?
Because you're going to do something kind and good with it?
Absolutely.
What are you going to do?
Put it on YouTube.
And just are you going to edit it in such a way that it's going to make the person that says something look foolish?
No, I have about 60 videos on YouTube. You can go and refer to them. We never do that.
Okay, so
we never have a need to do that.
Your suggestion earlier on of
the discussion,
of this discussion,
on the course that we're discussing,
cleared that up.
Here about the Einsteinian God that he believed.
So you accept this course, right? So you accept this course. Don't talk about Einstein. I don't know how to. I'm not interested in labeling this course yet. Whether you call this code A, B, C, D, or
I'm saying that there have been many scientists in the past.
From you personally, do you accept that this course has these particular characteristics of being in existence, has energy or possesses energy, and has a will? Do you accept?
Not the last one, not a will. I don't know how.
So without the will, how did the effect proceed from this course?
Well, the Big Bang is one explanation. I don't know.
No, Big Bang is not an explanation. Big Bang is the effect that we're talking about. The effect is the result of the cause. If the cause did not will it to happen, how did it happen? You should give me a scientific, rational explanation.
Well, I can give you one suggestion. It is possible that 14.5 billion years ago, an entity created the spark that created life and has had nothing whatsoever to do with anything from that moment. That's the same as saying he doesn't exist.
So this,
exactly the same.
So this entity existed?
Yes. I don't know what the entity was. I don't understand it. You obviously do.
No, we actually know. The moment you say entity, you know a lot about it. You know the entity exists. You know the entity caused the effect to proceed. So
no, I don't. I'm just saying you could argue that. I don't necessarily.
Now, how do you rationally postulate an effect from a cause without the cause willing it to happen? Without the cause actually
doing it? Well, I gave you one example, lightning. Lightning doesn't want to strike the ground, it just does, because there's a difference in potential between up here and down here. It doesn't want to kill that person, it just happens to do it.
Mm-hmm. Lightning happens because of all the chemicals and physical properties that are already in place. The physical chemical properties there, because of the properties there, they behave in that particular environment when it approaches.
Exactly, and that's how life actually came about. You're learning.
So now you have, and see whether you are learning too. So when this universe was expanding with an explosion, we call it an inflation explosion, from a cause, so this caused, how did the cause do that? Did the cause actually have inherent properties that somehow made the effect to come?
I'm not sure.
Did this cause have inherent properties which enabled the cause to produce this effect?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer.
The answer has to be the cause doesn't just sit there, do nothing, and produce the effect, is it?
Well, it depends if you believe in the chaos.
There is no such thing as chaos.
Oh, there's no such thing as chaos.
There is no such thing. Is there? Is there?
Yes.
How can we have theories to describe chaos then, if chaos was all chaotic? How can we do that? How can we, by mathematics, produce all these different patterns, which seems like chaotic? Is there such thing as? Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
life is
Is there such thing as
chaos.
chance? Is there such thing as chance?
around.
Hang on. Let's try to understand this issue. Is there such thing as chance? Really? So when we drop a coin, flip a coin, is it because of chance it's 50-50 head or tail, is it?
It's not exactly 50-50. There are occasions when a bird catches it, or it drops down a hole,
Is
or
it
it
because
lands
of-
on its edge,
so-
but it's nearly 50-50.
Is it because of chance? Is any of the way it falls on? It's nothing to do with chance.
It could be worked out. You'd have to
It
know
could be
so
worked
much.
out.
You'd
So
have
if
to
I
know
work out all the variables, all the factors, the weight of the coin, which metal is made from, the shape, the height, the wind, the density, all the factors.
It's possible you know.
It is not possible, my friend. We can guarantee every time it's going to fall on a head or a tail. So it was not a chance. We described it as a chance because we were unaware of all those factors and variables. Yeah? So when we have our universe with all these universal constants, so precise to the 120 decimal places, do you think it's because of chance?
It's not because of chance that those universal constants came to be what they are. It's the other way round. We exist because those universal constants happen to have.
Are these universal constants in our universe because of chance, or is all designed?
Because of chance.
I said something so precise, even to the 120 decimal places, by chance. You need to really understand what chance we're talking about. So precise, we call it constant. Yeah? Constant.
Yeah, there are about 5 or 6 of them.
There are more. You can bring it down to a few, but there are more than 20 or so, is it? Universal constants. So these constants, if you say these are all by chance, they just happens to be, or it's just there, then you're not actually understanding the reality.
We're only having this conversation.
How many universes
because
are
of
there?
those.
How many universes are there?
Well, there is a multiverse theory.
Oh, have you observed it? Have you observed the second universe?
He has got a key for that.
What's that?
I've got the keys for different.
No, have you observed? Or are we making theories about it?
knows, okay? Everyone is
We need to.
He has got key for different.
We need to first of all stick to reality. The reality is we are in a cosmos. We are in this cosmos. We haven't traversed this cosmos into another universe, have we? You can theorize and you can make lots of theories about, but if you haven't proven it, don't say this is a fact that this multiverse exists. Some people believe in it. Some people believe, because our universe.
I don't understand it, to be fair, the multiverse. I don't understand it.
How would you explain our universe with this whole design and precision in it, if no designer designed it?
We keep discovering new things all the time. It keeps going. There's nothing definite.
What would make you believe that this phone, which is not the latest iPhone, right? This phone, wait a second please. What would make you believe this was not designed, even I showed you so much precision involved in it?
It was designed.
But what would make you believe it's not designed? Do you see the ridiculousness of my question?
Yeah, it was.
It's quite obvious. It is quite.
You didn't recall me saying that.
Sorry.
You can say it again if you want to.
Did you realise that?
I'll give you a second take if you want.
That was a ridiculous question.
This is so precise, so much design involved, it's obvious. Our universe, we can see the precision even to the 120 decimal places, and you say, it's not designed.
At the moment.
Look at your approach.
Keep changing.
Please. Before you say keep changing, these constants do not change. That's why they're called constants.
Change always.
My sister.
Everything that is constant is change.
No, these constants, physical constants, do not change. That's why we call them constants. So, even though we see these constants, so much precision in front of us, for some reason, I can say this iPhone is designed, right? But not this physical universe.
Yeah, you're right.
That really shows that we don't have the same consistent method, do we?
No,
We apply one method in applying, and in fact, when anything that shows that there is a creator, a designer, an originator of this universe, we say that cannot be designed. When you look at the cosmos, the stars and the galaxies and everything, our natural world, the trees, we see evidence of design, but we deny it. Why we deny it? Because it is then linked with It is linked with what? The conclusion that there is a creator and designer.
Why do you want to
Why is that
take?
your assumption?
Why do you want to take all the good stuff, the trees,
Oh, good stuff.
all the pretty stuff?
You-
What about the
Just assuming.
botulism and all the nasty stuff there is in the world? That is horrible, but it's part of our natural world.
My friend, why are you on a denial that there is a designer of this universe?
Well, I can tell you if you want to hear the answer. So you just
So
showed
out of
us.
so out
Oh,
of
you don't
all
want to hear
this,
the answer.
no,
Okay.
please tell me, out of all this physical constants and everything that you see is design. For example, you see design everywhere. But why do you?
Will you tell me
deny-
when you finish the question?
Yeah, why are you in denial? Go ahead.
So you brought out an iPhone, not the latest one, as you said, right? But it has been designed by us. But we are the end point of an evolution. So it has been designed by creatures like us. The argument you brought out it was originally came from someone called William Paley, who picked up a watch and said, you know, if you see a watch, you'd have to believe there's a designer. Therefore, if you see people that are far more confident,
Why would you believe it's a designer?
well, you'd have to believe.
When you see a watch, why would you say this has a designer?
Because when you look at the watch, you can see that all of the parts fit intricately together. In our bodies, there are many, many parts that don't work properly.
And many parts do. So those parts which do they have a designer?
No.
Oh, so now you're selling William Paley when he came up with this analogy, or he saw the
was wrong.
watch. Hang on, the watch or the phone or the camera, anything. When you see the precision, mathematics that are involved, the science that are involved, physics and chemistry, all the laws that have been utilized. Yeah.
Yes.
And you somehow don't see the design in a phone or in a camera.
I
anything.
do see the design of the phone. I
What?
do see it.
Okay. What?
Because we
what-
designed
hang on,
that.
Hang on. What is the design that you see in the phone? Apart from the evidence of the design there.
Thousands of people that are employed, all of the designs and blueprints, all the previous versions
No,
of that.
within this map, within this particular piece, what is the design within it?
It's not all in there. All the
Hang on. What within this particular product is the evidence of design?
there's something.
The visual,
yeah,
the
visual
visual.
stuff.
There's a processor. Yes?
There's lots of things.
Lots of
Process
things.
is one of them. Yeah.
Right.
Things that it got
Right? So you can see. So when you have the universe,
Camera almost.
that's okay. So when you have the universe,
Yeah.
we can see a lot of these precisions
Yeah.
in place, and you're in denial that they're not designed. Why?
I'm not in denial that was designed. It was designed, but it was.
I know you're saying it's designed because the design is quite obvious within the product. The universe, that product with the universe coming in.
If there is a
this
God,
universe,
why would God
excuse me.
produce something
Sorry.
so imperfect?
Excuse me.
Why?
This universe, which is a product likewise of a creator, do you not see any design?
I see design in products like that.
But not in the
Need to see design.
But you don't see any design in the universe.
Okay.
Not
That's why I'm
enough.
saying.
Yes.
Not enough.
When it's quite
Yes,
obvious.
you can
So when I mentioned to you about the universal
But
constants,
that
which are so precise even to the 120 decimal places,
Yeah.
you don't see the design there.
No.
Okay. Nice talking to you. Okay. See you later.
Can I ask you a question?
There is design everywhere.
If you had two possibilities,
This is nice, and you're not shouting.
no, and I'm very close to the camera. If there were two possibilities, one that this universe and the orchestration of that universe and the infinite numeration of that universe was simply the result of a chance, multiverse, whatever you want to talk about, which is just a thought, a theory, at best. In fact, Sir Roger Penrose says, at best it's just a group of ideas. It has no scientific basis where you can prove that it exists or it doesn't exist. A little bit like really what we might argue, or atheists might argue about God. Now, if there are two variables, one that the universe came into being by itself, and the other that something had to facilitate that universe and order it in a very, very precise way, as the brother mentioned, to 120 decimal places. We're talking about things like, for example, gravity. We're told that if you stretch a ruler for the entire known length of the universe, some 14 billion light years across, and you divide that ruler up into 1 inch increments, and you move the force of gravity on that scale by just 1 inch human beings can't survive on Earth. That's the sort of chance that we're talking about. In fact, if we add the cosmological constant, the force of gravity, and the strong forces that neutrons and protons are held together, very precise as well, to form simple chemical reaction, the probability of those three arriving at their measure randomly is like 1 atom in the entire known universe.
That's not how they come about.
That's the probability. No, hold on a second. That's the probability of it happening randomly, without any orchestration, design, or function of putting them where they are.
You know, I actually think belief in God is nasty.
Now, hold on a second. Let me just finish. Let me finish first, and then I'll give you a chance. So we've got that on the one side, randomness, no creator. Now, when you only have 2 variables, the other variable becomes as certain as possibly you can get, because if one is 0.00002 to hundreds of decimal places to 1 that it got there randomly, the other variable has to be as certain as you can possibly get that it wasn't random, since there are only 2 variables. Now I ask you an honest question. If you encountered those probabilities to make any other decision in life, then you would have no problem going with the stronger one. And when it's infinitesimally stronger than the weaker one, then you would have even no problem whatsoever accepting that.
This is the only planet on the universe.
That's not the issue. You see, that's where.
You're saying it is. But saying that everything has happened because there was a reason. But what happens if does that mean there's other planets and God has decided this is not the only one? I mean,
well, if you're asking me about plurality in terms of planets, Allah mentions in the Quran that He is the Lord of the worlds. The singular word is not used as in world. Allah actually mentions worlds. Now, what that means, how many worlds, what worlds, how are there people on those worlds? We don't know that. We can't argue that. But Allah uses the plural word, not the singular word. However, we're talking about.
I think they found the precursors to life. I think there's a moon round. I read it on the news. They have found precursors to life on other planets now.
You see, the problem that I have with that is this. We're told that after the Big Bang, the entire volume within which the Big Bang was moving, space, whatever you want to call it, time, continuum, whatever, right? It was at millions of degrees centigrade.
I don't know physics. You obviously know a lot more than that than me.
Millions of degrees centigrade, hotter than the centre of the sun.
Oh yeah.
Right, it would be, right? And it stayed in that state for many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands
You're talking
of
about
years.
before the Big Bang?
No, at the Big Bang.
Right.
So where the Big Bang explodes, this entire volume that's moving apart at the speed of light, or it's relative depending on where you are, but it's very, very quickly, let's say very fast, this entire volume of space is at millions of degrees centigrade. And it stays in that state for many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years.
It probably takes quite a long time for it to cool down from that.
Right. Now the question arises, you see, that when we talk about biological living cells, not just on Earth, but anywhere in the universe, we come to the same hurdle, which is that when something is millions of degrees centigrade for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years, or possibly millions, a sterile environment, within that sterile environment we have living, complex biological cells.
No, they didn't exist then. When the Big Bang happened, let's say 14.5 billion years ago, we don't see the evidence of the start of life until about 4.5 billion
On Earth.
years ago. On Earth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the answer.
No. So my question. That's not my question. My question is this: that
How can life come from a sterile environment?
biological cells are not some 2 or 3 chemicals mixed together and hey presto, you get a living
they are a bit
cell.
more complicated.
They're a hell of a lot more complicated. It would be like me throwing bricks and mortar from out of space and having a fully functioning Oxford Street assembled with all its wiring and plumbing
the
and
argument
everything
against
else.
evolution. The argument.
Exactly. And that's what you'd have to argue if you were arguing that it happened randomly.
The argument.
And as absurd as that sounds, that you would have a whole of Oxford Street assembling itself because you threw some cement and some bricks and some wiring and some plumbing from outer space. You're saying that biological life, that's exactly what happened.
Well, the argument you're using
because
is
it's far more complex.
Yes, the argument you're using is called the argument from personal incredulity. Because you can't believe it's possible, it can't have happened. Now, I challenge you all again, read a book on evolution.
I love science. I have no problem with science.
Tell me a science book you've read.
The concepts of evolution, I forget the author's name though. I ended up buying 2 copies, not 1.
Oh, is that good?
Right, no, actually, eBay didn't deliver it, and I complained, and they sent me a second copy, so I ended up with 2. Anyway,
Evolution is True by Jerry Coyne is very good.
Well, evolution in itself has many intricate problems, but we'll deal with those later.
Oh, we will.
Because initially we have to deal with the very concept of that there are 2 variables.
We don't have to deal with
one is. Are there any other variables that you're aware of?
No, there might be.
Like what?
I don't know, but you're just.
I didn't really although you spoke for a long time, very eloquently, and I'm pleased about that. It didn't make any sense to me what you said. I answered each of the words individually,
I'll simplify
but together it didn't make sense.
Maybe I'm not clear.
No, you are very eloquent.
I mean,
and you're very patient.
If
you don't understand anything, you're very patient.
What I'm saying is that either the universe came about by itself, and the possibility of
you have a lot of time on you.
through simply random events is highly improbable to the extent where it's almost impossible.
Right. We're very unlikely to.
This is called.
And then
This is called talking about anything in the world except the Quran. They will not talk about the Quran because it's such a badly written book.
oh god,
They will talk about
It's such a,
oh god.
That's an example of randomness.
That's a bit of randomness there.
That's the randomness.
What I'm trying
think that's-
what I'm trying to say to you is that in life,
it's hatred.
as rational human
Hatred
beings,
of one human being against
we make
another.
decisions
It's not
based
the same.
upon a balance of probability in terms of what we think might be favourable to us,
Well,
or what.
You seem to hate the Quran yourself, so
When it comes to religion, the belief in God,
you hate something
I
that everyone
believe
hates.
that the statistics, the probabilities, are so incredible. And if it were anything else,
It's very unlikely.
like what
Life is very
holiday to take, or what area to live in,
I
or where to
agree.
buy a
Life
house,
is very unlikely.
people would have no problem grabbing those probabilities, those possibilities, because they'd be so, so strong. When it comes to religion, I find that regardless of the weight of evidence and support of it, people for some reason still deny it, and they will go for that which is almost bordering on impossibility.
Life is very unlikely. Evolution is unlikely as well. It did happen.
Well, that's a faith-based argument because it's not analytical or empirical, and it does.
Have you ever visited the natural history?
Yes,
Were you not impressed?
very impressed. I thought it was amazing. I drive past it almost every night because I have to work in that area.
Yeah, I've been in it.
It's a beautiful
times and
building
taken my
and it's a beautiful place.
grandchildren.
But sir, with all due respect, if you're going to move on to evolution, there are so many evolutionist arguments. One of them is speciation. So for example, they rely upon mutation, and that mutation has to be random. And if mutation is random, and you have a male, let's say, that's produced through random mutation, you then have to have a female that's produced through random mutation simultaneously. Because if that male reproduces with the original species, it becomes unified.
So, in answer to
Then you have other problems.
can I answer that one first? Because I'll forget the
Yes, please do. Yeah.
So the answer, unfortunately, is not what you want to hear.
Okay.
The answer is not one that I can give in 1 or 2 sentences.
Right.
The answer is in the book that I have now 3 times suggested you read.
Which one is that?
It's called Why Evolution is True by Jerry Coyne. There's also another one by Richard Dawkins called The Greatest Show on Earth. They're both pretty good books. If you read them all,
What does it say about speciation that I just described?
That's the problem. To answer it, see, I'm not one of these people that memorises things.
That's fair enough, and I accept that. And I accept that. But sir, what I would advise you to do, and I will look into those books, is that go back and look at these things that I've raised with you. Because speciation, for one species to change to another species, you have to have geographical separation.
Yes.
So when they mutate,
Usually.
when you have to, because if it mutates, you have to prevent that species from mating with the original species
that is
for
true.
many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years.
Yes.
Because up to then, they're able to mate. When they mate, it unifies the species to one species again.
You know, there are places in the world where
Now.
that happens now.
Well, no, they don't change. They don't change for
They're
one.
called ring species.
Yes.
That is in
Yes.
the book I've
Does
suggested.
it change into another animal,
Well,
or does it just grow a beak?
at the edge of the ring,
Yes.
you know what happens?
Yes.
These species evolve around, it could be around a sea.
But they stay
This
birds.
species
Yes.
can't make
But they stay birds. They stay birds, or they stay lizards.
Yes,
We're
but
talking
if you
about
wait several billion years, they might not.
Well, that's an assertion that you've made. That's not evidence, mate. Right? Now, when I go back to speciation and geographical separation, there's other problems that you have with that theory as well.
When you say speciation, you mean kind of macroevolution.
Yeah, well,
Macroevolution is just microevolution
over a very long period of time. Yet we don't see it.
I know you don't see it. The problem you've got is you're only going to last. You're only going to live 70 or 80 years. That's why you don't
in
see it.
200 years of anthropology, right, of all these digs in China where they've managed to go down to many tens of millions of years, they find different species, but they don't find the same species evolving into another species. However, let me just finish my point.
Of course they're going to find an individual
so
creature.
geographical separation is also a necessity. Now in evolution we're told that the feline trait, let's say, cats, all came from one species. Yet in Africa, in one plane, where there is no geographical separation, we have cheetahs, and we have lions, and we have leopards, and we have different cats. How does that take place? How does that happen?
Well, the answer that I think this is now the. Are you getting this on the phone?
I don't know if
the
it's
answer
still
is fourth or fifth time I've said it. I can't give you the answer in one or two.
No, that's fine. I accept that.
And I want you
Yes.
and all of you
Yes.
to get a book
Yeah,
on
fine.
evolution
That's great.
and read it. Will you do that?
That's great.
Or will you only read the stuff that your religious
I have
leaders
the-
tell you?
No, no, that's not-
The book is called Why Evolution is True by Jerry Coyne.
Our religious teachers don't tell us not to read books on evolution. We have no problem with this.
Oh, you don't?
No.
So you're
Whatsoever.
happy for them to read books on
Absolutely,
evolution?
absolutely. My children studied it in school.
What did
I have
they
no
think?
problem. Well, when my son came home at a young age of about 13, 14, he said, "Papa, Dad, they've cracked it. They've told us that evolution is a fact, it is provable, and that they've told us that we've come from apes." And I said, "That's fantastic, son.
And you're the big gorilla.
Let me explain to you certain factors. Did they explain this to you? No. Did they tell you about that? No. But they sold it as an absolute analytical and empirical fact. When in reality it is not. When in reality it is not.
There are very few facts. There are very
When
few
in
facts.
reality it is not. And I find the
lobby behind it.
the lobby behind it, just as
Oh, sorry, was that what you were supposed to say then? The lobby behind
well,
it.
the lobby or the
you don't believe there's a lobby behind it?
or the strength of
The idea,
community.
Darwinism.
Hang on a second. What do you mean? What do you mean the lobby behind it? There's some political agenda?
You have a lot of
The
financial backing.
education system for
You have a
your
lot of
information is
financial
based
backing
on lobbying. Yeah?
for people who are studying evolution and promoting evolution. And if you have a scientist that ever starts to stand up and question certain elements of evolution, he's regarded as a heretic, as a somebody.
That's how new scientific discoveries are
Well,
made.
so with all due
because
respect,
someone says
so
something.
with all due respect, this has been sold to us as an absolute
What hasn't it sold to you?
reality and fact. Well, because I believe that I should think about things more carefully and not just simply believe anything that anyone tells me.
You do.
And that
You read the
includes-
Quran, and that's the only thing you
Well,
believe.
but there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is this. Before I accept something as correct, I validate it.
By reading the opposite, something.
Absolutely. So I read the challenges that are made to it.
You form your own opinion.
I read the assertions that it makes. I go to even the most dodgiest websites like Answering Islam that have a very right-wing opposite view of those Quranic ayahs, those verses, etc. I listen to what the scholars say, I read for myself, and then I make my decision based upon my knowledge and my understanding, and that's subjective. It's limited to my own understanding and
The question is, have you read the Quran?
Now the thing is, what I would suggest to you, sir, is this is I have no problem with science at all. I would say to you, at least read the Quran, see what it says. I would read a book, a very nice book written by Maurice Bucaille, since you like science, a French surgeon who in the 70s wrote a book in French, Le Bible, Le Coran, Les Sciences, or Aide les Sciences. It was later translated into English and many other languages. He was astonished when he examined the body of Pharaoh at the time of Moses, that in his investigation he found the body appeared to have gone through a drowning. So death had been caused by drowning. When he told his associate person there that, you know, he drowned, indeed, he did drown. The biblical narrative and the Quranic narrative of Allah drowning him, it appears that he was in fact drowned. Historically, at least they are accurate. His companion said to him, don't mention this to the Muslims. He said, why not? Because in their Quran, not only does it say that he will be drowned, but Allah says we shall save him and keep him saved, preserved, as a warning to the future generation.
This is the predictive power of the Quran.
Right,
Islam.
just one out of many.
This is called confirmation bias. You're cherry.
No, but hold on a second. No, but,
You know you're cherry picking.
Let me finish.
You're picking the nice stuff.
Exactly. You could argue that. I agree. You could argue that. But you'd only be right.
The information is so
all
vast,
of
you
the
have to
other
pick something.
assertions
You have to pick
and all
something
of
to
the
say.
other things that he looked at were also cherry picked, then you'd be right. And if they weren't, then it would make it extraordinary. And that is why the Quran is extraordinary. Because a Christian surgeon who goes and learns Arabic, that's his level of devotion. He said, I don't want Muslims to tell me what the Quran says. I am going to learn Arabic for myself. I'm going to translate it for myself, just in case I'm being spun a yarn. So he learns the Quran, learns the Arabic, and then he compares analytical and empirical scientific facts that are now provable through observation and experimentation. And he compares what the Quran talks about those things and how it refers to those things. And he then looks at what the Bible says about those things. His conclusion was that he becomes Muslim. Because he argues that this book, the Quran, is an impossibility that it could have come from a 7th century Arab, or a 10th century, or a 15th century, or even a 20th century.
And I should believe this man because he's a surgeon?
No. What you should do is this. As a rational, fair-minded individual searching the truth, when you have an evidential backing, at least read it, query it, question it, and investigate it for yourself. And if you then prove to yourself that through your investigations that it's a false book, it is a conjecture of nonsense, just theories and nonsense, then Allah gives you the free will. In the Quran, Allah says there is no compulsion in religion. You don't have to accept it.
I don't.
No, you don't have to. But accept it only if the balance of evidence, the balance of probability is incredibly high. Then be honest to yourself. And say to yourself that if I find, on balance of probability, that this Quran could not have come from a man in a desert in the 7th century, or the 10th century, or the 15th century, and the things in it are incredibly profound, and it gets them right every time, and it doesn't make these mistakes, then at least what I would do...
those up there? Those. Do you think there are not people within each of those religions that believe themselves as fervently as you do?
Of course they are. Of course there are. But there's a logical conclusion to that. And the logical conclusion to that is this. Either they can all be wrong, or one of them can be right.
That's exactly the point I was going to make.
That's logic, isn't it? So they can't all be right if they all contradict one another.
Let me guess which one you think is right.
Well, I've done it through...
Let me guess.
Yes. Why don't you do that? Yes.
Islam.
How do you think I've arrived at that conclusion?
Because
I thought you're more intelligent than that.
Hold on.
either been born to Muslim parents and have been indoctrinated within that religion as a young child,
Brainwashed, yeah.
or you've had a moment.
You're not born in and then you're brainwashed back in, right?
Okay.
By someone.
Okay.
And in fact, that point I made, there was a guy called, he wrote a book called Why I'm Not a Christian. He was the fan against nuclear weapons, Bertrand Russell. And he said in that book, the opening book, I still remember it, all religions are mutually exclusive. If any one of them is right, then all of the others are wrong. He said exactly that.
And that's logical.
Yeah, I think that's logical.
But what I would suggest is I would tweak that slightly.
Oh, really?
Yes. What I would say to that is this: that one being correct doesn't mean that all of them have to be
Totally wrong, yes.
incorrect.
Yes. And that is the case.
They could have parts in it that are right.
Oh yeah, like the golden rule, be kind to others.
They could
That's
have
good.
They could have parts.
Has that got that in the Quran?
Yes.
Has it got has it all religions?
In fact, the Prophet,
More complex than that.
In fact, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that on the day of judgment there will be some amongst you with a very heavy weight of salah, which is prayer, and zakah, which is charity. But because of
You think prayer's a good thing?
let me just finish. But because your personal dealings with one another will be so poor, all of your good deeds will come to naught.
I agree with that.
In other words,
You have to be a good person first.
Right. So in
Are
other
we
words,
good people?
Well,
Can we shake hands?
Absolutely. I think most people in this country are very good people.
My brother.
Right. Yeah, we are brothers in humanity. Of course. Of course we are. And that's how we see it.
Kindness to each other is so much more important than being right.
Well, and this is what the Quran and this is what
the Quran says.
Islam preaches, right?
I come up with that because I just think it's a kind thing to do, not because someone tells me to say it.
And now you might, you may argue.
This country was in the dark ages for a long time.
That you've come to that conclusion, self-perpetuated, self-created.
Well, by speaking to people, reading stuff.
Now, within Islam, we're told that Allah places
Remove the police and the law and find out what happens.
Allah places a fikr, a conscience in everyone's heart. So everyone knows right from wrong. So they can't stand up on the dead.
Including psychopaths.
Well, psychopaths is a medical condition.
Yeah, about 1% of all people are psychopaths.
So people who have a mental problem, in Islam they're not responsible for their actions. If there is a mental impediment where they are not in control, then they don't pray, they don't do these things, they shout, they scream, they swear. They're not held accountable, Allah says, because they have an issue with in other words,
Irrespective of background.
because Allah says in the Quran, no soul is burdened, no soul is burdened more than it can bear. In other words, if you are rational, logical, reasonable, intelligent, and everything's in place and calm,
You know, the way you spoke to me was so much more pleasant than the last guy that seemed to want to scream at me.
I think it's a level of passion rather than an aggression.
Oh, I'm sure his heart's in the right place, but it's so unpleasant to be screaming like that.
It's passion more than aggression. But what I would say to you, sir, is this.
Go to any church.
I would say, I would say, look,
Stephen starts singing.
as fair-minded human beings, and I believe most people in this country think it's a fantastic country of very, very good people. And I'm not just saying that because I wish to favour your allegiance or your friendship or anything else. I truly believe that.
Otherwise you wouldn't be living here,
Exactly, right? It's an amazing place with an amazing history.
Imagine being able to have this in Saudi Arabia.
No, you probably wouldn't do. But that's not a consequence of them following Islam.
And it's not Islamic.
That's the wrong Islam.
Not the wrong Islam.
Using Islam. That's politics you're talking about.
That's a consequence of not following Islam. Because at the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him, there were many debates, there were many Jews, there were many Christians. They were invited. In fact, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, on certain journeys, prayed in a mosque, prayed in a church.
Or in a synagogue.
Yes, prayed. Because it's not an issue in Islam. Because in the Quran, Allah says, even amongst the Jews and the Christians, there are believers. In other words, even amongst them. So even in Islam, even in Muslims, there are certain people who are not believers. They say they are believers, but they don't adhere to the message. They don't follow the Quran. They don't even believe in God. So even amongst the Muslims, there are some Muslims.
Cultural influence.
Even amongst the Muslims, there are some Muslims who are not Muslims.
Nationalism, culturalism, politics.
But what the Quran is asserting is saying that don't call them that they're all condemned to hellfire, because even amongst them, there are good people, there are just people, there are people who do
I hope you judge on how we behave to our fellow men and our kindness to others.
It's a very significant part of how we...
Not the most important part?
No, because the most important part is that the one that gave you the very oxygen that you breathe,
My mum and dad.
the very heart that beats inside your chest.
My mum and dad.
Well, when your heart stops, your mum and dad are not going to come to restart your heart. And even
No, that's going to be a doctor who went through doctorate training.
and even the best of doctors.
You just said they created your heart.
Even the best of doctors may not be able to restart that heart, despite that heart not having any damage. Despite when you're on the machine, everything works. There's blood flow, the heart is beating, the lungs, the diaphragm is working, it's sucking in oxygen. Yet they may not be able to revive you again once you are dead. The best of doctors. Who do you rely on at that time? Not your doctors, not your mama, not your papa.
When you say rely on, I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, what I mean by that...
Well, let's hope you're not in that position
What I
someday.
mean by that...
Well, eventually I will be. I don't want to upset any of you.
I hope it's quick.
But we're all going to be in that position.
I hope it's painless. I hope it's,
Sometime we're all going to
I hope it's
die.
Of
painless.
course we are. And the question that you need to ask yourself is this. What is it that leaves that body, that renders it lifeless, despite the functions of that body all operating? The digestive system, the heart pumping,
nails continue to grow.
Everything is working.
Right.
And yet, no matter how hard we try to bring that person back, you know, one of the other phenomena I just learned about recently on YouTube from a Sikh surgeon who was talking about the time of death. Now, I didn't realize this, but we're told that at the time of death, Allah sends the angels to question the soul, and they have a conversation. And I was thinking, hold on a second,
do you mean that actually happens,
Yes.
or that's an allegory?
No, that happens, right? This is what we're told. Now, I found that very, what is going on here, right? This ICU worker, surgeon, doctor, he says, at the time of death, we see a phenomena of brain activity, and it comes to 0, and we pronounce the person dead. No brain activity. We see a sudden spike occurring, which lasts for a few minutes, and the level of that spike indicates a deep, detailed conversation that an individual is having, and then it once again goes to 0.
And you think that's when the angels
I don't
speak
think that. What I think is this, that it's remarkable that a man in a desert in the 7th century said this happens, and that we have some evidence now that supports it. That I find remarkable. Now, to an atheist, it may be a random glitch, meaningless. But I find it very interesting.
Well, I'm glad you find it comforting.
I find it very interesting.
But that's just confirmation bias.
Well, what I would suggest is that if there are many things mentioned in the Quran, and these things are discovered many centuries, thousands of years afterwards,
Cherry picking.
and yet there are no mistakes.
A lot of cherries.
No, hold on. And yet every cherry is ripe, and none is rotten.
But you know that's not true.
On
There's
balance
lots
of
nasty
probability,
stuff that isn't true in the Quran.
like what?
You're right, I haven't read it.
Then why talk about it with authority?
I can go to these
how
websites the way
No,
you do and see all that
no.
stuff.
But
I'm sorry, sir.
But is that a fair way of conducting a discussion?
You're losing your credibility
Is
with
that a
that
fair way of
sentence.
discussing something?
Can you tell, according to Quran, how old is the earth?
It says ayam. The word used is ayam. Now in the Quran, the word ayam can be translated in many different ways. One of them is long periods. Long periods. If you translate it using long periods, then there is no problem in the Quran and the description of the age of the earth. If you decide to translate it as 24-hour days, then of course there's a problem. Right? But remember, 24-hour days came after the universe came into being, after the earth, exactly. After the earth and the sun were formed, then you have a 24-hour day, right? Before that, So the Quran, when it asserts this ayam, it's referring to pre-Earth and 24 hours and all this concept that we have come up with in terms of this Earth revolving around once and it becomes night and day, etc.
I have to go, but I'm really grateful for the time.
It was a pleasure.
You're very eloquent. I guess practiced. You've said this more than once or twice, haven't you?
I have said it more than once or twice, but
because you get asked the same questions.
I get asked a lot of the times the same questions.
You said cherry picking all the rest.
You see, sir, you know what I would say, and I say this to a lot of people.
You're cherry picking your questions.
It's not the eloquence or the poetry or the manner in which you speak.
Semantics.
Or the semantics. That's not important.
Right.
Allah tells us that when you talk about Islam, beautify and speak of it in the most beautiful ways to people. Because it is a beautiful thing.
Well, I agree. You've spoken to me much more pleasantly than the last guy.
But I know that guy very personally, and
he's a very nice
and
guy.
I know that it's more passion than aggression.
I forgive you.
So that's nice.
Different strokes for
That's
different
nice
folks.
of you.
Yeah?
But we should have an open mind.
I hope so.
He hasn't evolved
One should always
fully
remember
from ape.
one should not mistake eloquence for truth.
Absolutely.
Just because you
totally
just
agree.
because you can say things clearer perhaps than I can.
Yes.
And it doesn't necessarily.
Likewise,
make
ignorance
true.
is not
That's absolutely right.
truth.
That's
as
why
well.
I'm saying it.
Ignorant
I'm testifying
statements are
that
not
to
truthful
myself,
as well.
right? And to yourself as well. But just because you might feel that
Non-educated
I've said
questions as
it better doesn't mean I'm right. But what means that I'm right is that you put to the test the things that I've said, and you test them and you investigate them.
If you're sincere,
then if you conclude that I was truthful, then accept the message.
I have no doubt that you believe what you're saying. I have no doubt at all.
That's not my point though. My point is not what I believe. The point is, through conclusions of your investigations, come to a reasoned approach, an investigative approach.
if you haven't read it, and you said you haven't read it.
Don't have an opinion of the Quran without at least consulting people who know about the Quran. I don't mind if you go and talk to people who criticize the Quran. I have no problem. But then do the other thing as well, which is just. Which is look at the people who defend it and how they defend those questions, those queries.
Have a balanced view and then make your own mind up.
Then balance those on balance of probability as to which you feel is the more compelling argument, and go with wherever the evidence.
And only you can go with that. Yeah.
Go with wherever the evidence takes you, not the poetic speech or anything else, or the loud words or the soft words of an individual, but the substance of what they say. Balance that up. If you think it's more truthful, accept it. If you don't, then deny it. At least then you can say that I've made an informed decision based upon knowledge.
This is partly true, this is truthful, this is rubbish, whatever.
You know, whatever. But it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
That is true. People have to not criticise without actually learning something. It is. It's ridiculous. Sorry, it is ridiculous to slag off.
And his eloquence, if he's passionate about something, you're passionate about a hobby.
No.
If you have a hobby, you would speak very passionately about it.
I think you spoke very clearly. I don't believe that you lack eloquence yourself. You're very eloquent yourself. But
I'm not as practiced as you are at saying the things
But the thing is, to be honest, you can talk to me about any subject.
What else would you like to
This
talk
is me. This is how I speak.
What would you like to talk about?
This is not something that
What else would you like to talk
I'm not just
about?
saying. I don't just flick the switch when it comes to religion and speak in this way, and then everything else is something different.
Bloody hell, you must drive your wife.